Hi, I'm Courtney. Welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. I can't do that. I'm not going to do that at all. Hi, I'm Courtney. Welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. Today, I'm here with Katie. She's 26 years old. She's a teacher. She lives in St. Louis, Caucasian female whose sexual preference is male, he, him pronoun. I'm trying to get that right. And is in a monogamous relationship. Tell me I got all of that right.
Yep.
Yes. All right. And what is your condition?
I have HSV2.
All right. And how long have you had it?
Almost 3 years. 3 years in April.
Okay. And how are you dealing with it now?
Now I don't really think about it on a daily basis. I haven't had outbreaks as frequently in the past year and a half, unless I'm super stressed or my immune system's down.
And when you do, are you on the daily suppressants?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I was for the first year, and then I wasn't having frequent outbreaks, so I decided to stop taking them.
Okay. And now your partner does not have HSV2, correct?
Correct.
All right. And how long have you two been together?
We have been together 3 years in July.
Oh, okay. Cool. So was he with you when you contracted it?
No.
Okay.
I met him 2 months after I contracted.
Okay. And how did you contract it? Let's go there.
So I contracted, I was in a situation where I was sexually assaulted, and the person who sexually assaulted me ended up giving me HSV2 as well as chlamydia and gonorrhea. And I didn't realize that until a few weeks after the event. And I thought it was kidney stones and pneumonia, and everything under the sun. Went to urgent care. They didn't have an answer. Went to a doctor. They didn't have an answer. Everything hurt all over. And finally went to my gynecologist, and he was basically like, yeah, we need medicine now.
Oh, wow. So how many weeks did you say went by?
It probably 2.5 until I started noticing really serious symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And then another week of pain before I got medicine.
So you went to urgent care, you went to all these doctors, and none of them thought to check you for any STDs at all?
Nope.
Wow.
They thought I had a urinary tract infection. They thought I had a yeast infection. It was embarrassing because you have all these people looking all over for all these answers, and then you feel stupid because how do they not know?
How'd you not figure that out as a medical professional?
Right.
Why is this not something you looked for initially? And did you have any visible signs?
Not initially, but then as the weeks progressed, then I started having the red open sores. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times because of other things that I'm involved with, where I've had to do photo shoots or dance things, then I've had to shave. Mm-hmm. And so getting ingrown hairs have a very similar appearance at the beginning until they break. And so in my head, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Until the pain and the spreading and the sores and the clusters, and then, yeah.
And so when you went into the doctor, your gynecologist, and she said they need.
I go to a gynecologist.
Oh, a guy. Mm-hmm. So it's a gynecologist.
He is awesome.
I'm so bad about puns like that. So your gynecologist gives you the medications that you need, and what was next? What happened after that?
Well, he came back. He said, I have some really good news. I have some really bad news. He said, the gonorrhea and chlamydia, we can fix. It will be gone in 2 days with the medication. But you also have herpes, and that's going to be something that you'll have to live to learn how to deal with for the rest of your life. It's not going to go away. And I just broke down crying because I was 23 at the time, just out of college, just starting my career, didn't have a serious boyfriend. I thought the world was ending. It was really scary. And then like went home, called one of my best friends who at the time pursuing a medical profession. And she had some background knowledge and like spread some light on the issue. Because at that moment I was like, I'm not going to Google this because all the worst things are going to pop up when I Google this.
Exactly.
So,
and how was your friend able to help you when you called her? So you had someone you can call and talk through this.
She was concerned more for like my emotional and mental sake, because when I called to tell her that, I also then had to tell her about how I contracted from the sexual assault. And so like she was more worried about that. She had friends who had herpes, and so she was like, you can live with this. People live with it every day. Like, you will have a life. So she shed some light on that part of it, but she was more concerned about making sure that emotionally and mentally I was okay with moving on from the other stuff that happened.
Now, this is a very touchy subject, but one that you said you did want to use to help someone else. I've had guests on the show who have been sexually assaulted and not really having the background and experience to talk through something like that. I've just, like talked to them off the air about it, but you want to more so talk about it here openly. And I want to give you the opportunity to do that and let you know, by the way, like if at any point this becomes too much, we can cut this off and edit whatever we need to. But go ahead and share what you would like to share about the sexual assault.
So between college and meeting my current boyfriend, was pretty promiscuous and like sought out sexual interactions as a way of escape, as a way to like mentally escape from challenges and stresses in daily life. And so like sex didn't mean a whole lot to me during that time. But when this particular event happened, like I had just moved into a new apartment. This guy who we had a connection through work had found my new apartment, had, banged on the door late at night. There were stairs, so like I didn't have a way to like peek out and see who it was. So went down, opened the door, saw it was this person who I knew couldn't push the door back closed, pushed his way into the apartment. We got up to my bedroom, and part of me like started shutting down, just like any other sexual situation where I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna shut out and like go into this little cloud of out of body experience, which I did. But he also had like ended up breaking my bed, so it was like a really physical experience, and scary because it was almost like breaking and entering, and then the whole sexual assault on top of it. And then he was done. He's like, okay, bye. And I'm just like sitting there like on a broken bed, just my new apartment, which I think I had escaped some other people by moving into. So I didn't feel safe. And all of those things. And at that point, like I didn't realize that he had these STDs. And so it like that, if I would have known that on top of it, it would have like made it 10 times worse in the moment. But the assault was more emotionally and mentally troubling because of how physical it was, not so much like the sexual act of it. Because up until like me meeting my current boyfriend, sex had not meant anything more than like a physical thing. Like there were no like emotional ties to it for me.
So with that all being said, you would say you use sex as an escape, and then this event the sexual assault, was not trying to sugarcoat anything about it, like it kind of took away your escape.
Yeah.
Would you say that? Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine like what that was like for you, and as a man.
Well, it took the power out of it for me. Because up until that point, like I felt like I had so much power because I can control me being able to remove myself mentally from a situation like that. And in that moment, like, you really can't. No. Like, you think you can, but like, there's so much that continues and like stays with you, that like sticks with you forever, versus like other situations. Like, I've had sex with people and I don't even remember their name or like where it happened, because I was so in my cloud, because it was like this power that I could control for myself. Just like people who have like eating disorders or other things where they feel like they have like that control. That's like what it was for me.
Yeah, and I have a friend that I talk to about things like this, like I told you about before, and like, I'm very ignorant, and I think that I represent a vast majority of society when it comes to rape, sexual assault. So, you know, like I said, if I say anything wrong or use the wrong terminology, feel free to call me out on it. But like, I want just to have your permission for us to like explore the situation, to not only help for someone who has gone through sexual assault, for a survivor of sexual assault, but for people who, for like guys even, who may not even know that they're performing a sexual assault act, because like in doing my research and talking to people, like I feel like, shit, how many times did I sexually assault someone, or how often did I not ask for consent? And like I just want to do what we can here to make this as useful for everybody, and especially be respectful of your feelings and your boundaries and what you are and are not willing to share with us here. So I obviously this was forced upon you in the worst of ways, like in your safe place. You know, essentially your place was broken into. How do we? I don't know. I don't know really what to. I don't know how to not touch on the wrong thing, but this is obviously something that needs to be addressed. So I'm gonna like ask you to help me walk through what we can help other women with who will have gone through a similar situation, because I've heard of the like shutting down and just kind of like let it happen until it's over, whereas to a guy it may just seem like, oh, okay, this is consent because she's not telling me no, right? Is that something that,
well, in this particular case, this guy had a lot of financial power over me, I guess. Financial power, like in the St. Louis region, but also like physical power. So like his physical size and like his position in terms of the place of employment. So there were like other levels that made it to where I felt like I couldn't say no, or I couldn't like speak up against it, because I felt completely helpless on all three of those levels. Versus like if it were some other person doing the exact same thing, feeling like I would have had the power to say something. I guess it just makes it like complicated on a lot of layers.
So you feel like, and you haven't filed a report or anything against this person, right? And the reason for that being this person's status, do you feel like people wouldn't believe you, or what has kept you from doing that?
So when it happened, it was during a pretty critical time at the place of employment where like my job, to be able to keep my job, like I would not have been able to tell. And after I was done working at that place, like it had already, a year had passed. And so it felt like, okay, this is no longer relevant. And I don't want to be that person that now calls it out after the fact or a year later. And so like, I just didn't. Like I was able to have closure through a lot of different other like avenues. And to me personally, it didn't feel worthwhile to reopen it and to pursue it. Now, there were other girls who interacted with this person who contacted me and said, what do I do he's acting aggressive in this way, or what do I do? This is happening, or and I was like really upfront with them, like this happened to me, and you need to be careful. So like I tried in whatever way I could to protect other people who might be in that circle that he could reach. Right. And as far as I know, like they were able to get out of the situation. But that's all that I really felt like I was. I don't want to say capable, but like willing to do.
Yeah, and him having this status, this power, this control over your your livelihood, essentially. Obviously, that made it hard for you to tell anyone. But what were there any alternatives? Is there anything that you think that you could have done differently after the fact at all? Like, given your employment was at risk, and I guess his position would have been at risk as well.
Not necessarily.
Really?
So we were under different contracts. So the contract that I was under stated that I was not allowed to have any type of relation with anyone in the...
So he breaks into your home, and at this point, he's a criminal. So like this, at this point, this guy has broken
But you could
into
argue
your
that,
home, right?
because like, yes, breaks in, but I open the door, right? So there's all these things that go through your head, like my head, as like, yes, I could argue that, but then he could argue, oh, she unlocked the door, she let me in, et cetera, et cetera. So there's, I mean, just like any situation like that, like there's a really fine line, and I just didn't think I was gonna win it.
Mm-hmm. And in talking to people after the fact, is there anyone like professionals who deal with sexual assaults, rape survivors? What's their advice to you, or what has been their feedback to you?
They said ultimately, like, it's my choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one particular person that I've talked to advised me, like, it's your choice. So whatever you feel comfortable doing, then that's what you need to do. It's not, yeah.
And since having your power taken away from you in that sexual assault, has the recovery process and speaking with people and helping the other women who are in a similar position, who are around this particular person, has this helped you with getting your power back in terms of like choice, like having a choice to decide what happens next? Is that helpful in the recovery process?
Yeah, in a sense. I'd say even like my current relationship, and I've been with my current boyfriend for almost 3 years in July. Like, there are times when we have sex and it doesn't even come up in my head, like it's not triggered at all. And there are times that we have sex and I'm like, we have to stop, because like this particular touch or this particular situation like is a huge trigger. And I'm really thankful that he is supportive of whatever in that moment. And so that helps me like feel like I have that power back to be able to say no, and that someone respects me like in those moments.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. And I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And especially since that is another thing that's helpful to your recovery. Do you feel like it's 3 years, you said, almost?
Mm-hmm. Well, we will have been together 3 years in July.
Okay,
so about 2.5 right now.
So over the last 2.5 years, like, he's been supportive throughout. Do you feel like it's gotten better over time?
Yeah, everything gets better over time,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't remove stressors. You can't remove triggers. And
Right.
so I think, yeah, I mean, there are certain things that he knows not to even do because it will be an automatic trigger unless I initiate.
Boundaries.
Right. There are boundaries unless he knows, like, if I initiate a certain position or if I initiate a certain like touch, then it's like okay because I've initiated it, whereas if he would have initiated it previously, like, it would have been a trigger. So it's just, I mean, it's that thing where you have to grow together between the two people to like figure out where those boundaries are and like what can we do to keep each other safe and to respect each other's everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And just to make sure, were you able to cover what it was that you wanted to cover throughout this portion of the podcast? I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that this was yours. So you
Yeah.
were able to get that out there. And like, for someone who is raped or sexually assaulted, or even if you're questioning it at all, do you have any resources available or any resources that you've used that we can direct them to for support?
No,
Okay.
not that I've really looked into. Like, I really relied on close friends, and then one particular professional who actually is a close friend also. And I tried a couple different therapists and counselors, and it didn't seem super successful. Like, a lot of it was with anxiety, and I was just able to find other coping strategies
Yeah.
on my own, like working out or eating a certain way or managing my life in a certain way that alleviated those anxieties without the professional.
Got
So
it. Okay. And so, what final piece of advice do you have for someone who may think they have been sexually assaulted or feels like there's someone in a position of power and they feel like they can't go to the authorities about it?
I think that you have to trust your gut, and whatever you decide, like, then that's the right decision. Like, no one can tell you what is right. Like, you're the only person that can make that decision for you. So even if it's a day after and you feel like you need to go report it, then, like, if that's your decision, then people need to support it because it's yours. And if it's a year later, or 15 years later, or 20 years later, then like, that's also your decision. And sometimes it takes that long for people to be able to get to that point to
Right.
tell.
I understand. And it angers me that this happened to you. I'm sorry, like, really am. And for anyone who has been in that in a sexual assault or a rape, any survivors, or if you're questioning it at all, I'm more than happy to refer you to a friend of mine who can refer you to qualified resources. I didn't tell her I was going to do this, but she and I are in contact enough to where it'll be okay. And she's helped me with different conversations that I've had with people about sexual assault before. And hopefully what we can do here with this podcast episode is, like, empower the women, the sexual assault survivors, to understand that it is your choice to whether you want to go to the authorities or if you want to. I'm not supposed to, like, guide you through what it is to do, but trust your gut, just like Katie said, and do what you want to do. This is your choice in how to respond to it. There is support out there for you. You don't have to stay silent about it unless you choose to. And like, I don't know. I'm just it angers me how often this happens, how often this comes up, and that there's really nothing that I can do about it. And the only thing that I feel I can do through this podcast is really encourage us to support each other. And when someone comes to you as a rape survivor and confides in you, to listen and let them know that they have a choice in how they want to respond. Don't coerce them or direct them in any way or another, but just listen. And in that listening and providing that support and letting them know that you're there for them really gets the ball rolling for their road to recovery. Did I say everything okay? Like, you don't want to, like, punch me in the face or say anything wrong?
No.
All right, good. Okay, so there's no, like, cool way to say this or, like, professional way at all. But back to the herpes. So your experience with that, you would, when we talked earlier, you said, like, treating that trauma more than anything, having the emotional support from contracting herpes was more so what you needed than anything else.
Yeah.
And then like coping with it, what changed for you? Like after you found out that you had gotten herpes, what changed?
In the moment, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because you, like, at the time I was single and was, like I said, like straight out of college, all of these things. Straight out of college. So all these things, like, it felt like the world was at my fingertips, and then it was just like ripped out of my hands. So in the moment, everything changed. Mm-hmm. After several weeks of medication and like my life and my vagina going back to normal, then it, like, you don't forget about it, but you realize like, oh, like life goes on, and I'm still a person who has daily challenges and successes and I don't know, everything. And so I think it would be harder for me if I hadn't met my current boyfriend so soon after, and he hadn't been so open and supportive of the situation so quickly. Mm-hmm. Like I think it would be different for me now. But like in that moment or that experience, it made me realize like, okay, there are people who are like okay with this and can love me despite all of the baggage and the scars and the herpes that will be with me for the rest of my life. Like he'll still love me for me, and I think that's really cool. And that was like really healing and powerful for me in and of itself.
Okay. How did you disclose to him?
So actually, this is like a side story. Ooh. We met at a bar.
Oh, and no way.
On my birthday. So it's the last bar of the night. On my birthday, I'm looking real good, and I'm dancing, and he comes up to me to try and dance with me, and I'm like, get away from me. Like, get the F away from me. Don't touch me. Like, I'm having a good time. I don't want this random dude trying to take me home tonight. Like, heck no. This is like a month and a half after this happened. So I'm like just trying to like have fun and not worry about being in a relationship.
So you were dude proof at this point.
I was, yes. Get away. Got the walls up. They are thick. They are high. Like, no one is getting in. So that happens. The next day I'm out with friends, and he walks in, and they're like, oh, hey. I'm like, ew, that is that douchebag from last night. And they're like, what? He's the nicest guy ever. He never tries to talk to girls. He probably went out of his way to like come talk to you. I'm like, oh crap, I made a mistake. So then did the whole reintroduction, blah, blah, blah.
Did you apologize for being an asshole?
No, because that's just who I am. So he saw it straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we like started talking, really nothing sexual until like a month and a half later. And we're like starting to take clothes off, and I was like, stop. And I just start crying. I said, I have to tell you something. And it took me a couple minutes to like get it out, because this is the first person that I've actually really liked since this happened, where I've had to disclose this information, who hasn't been like a close girl or guy friend. I haven't had to tell them before I'm having sex, etc. Tell him, and he's just like, okay. And then we continue on having sex. So, I mean, that was really cool. Mm-hmm.
So you were
because I know not every person, and I don't even know myself. Like, if I was in that, if the roles were reversed, if I would have reacted that way.
I know I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't have. And it sounds like such a shitty thing to say, but because I didn't learn what I've learned about herpes or any other STD for that matter until I started doing this podcast about a little bit less than a year ago.
Yeah.
And if that were me, I'd have just been like, I mean, well, as a guy, like, if my dick's hard in the situation, I'm like, all right, and then we'll deal with the consequences later. But, like, had this been a situation where, I always tell this story where, like, this one girl on Tinder messaged me and said something about having asthma, and I was like, oh, we all have our flaws. I have herpes. And then I never heard from her again. Like, if the roles were reversed, that would have been me.
Yeah.
But, like, now that I know what I know, it's like, okay, if this person is someone that I like or I could get to know, then okay, let's take things slow. But after a month and a half, you kind of know whether or not you'd be with someone.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Congrats. Yeah, it was super cool. Yeah. Well, and my best friend who I had called like immediately leaving the doctor's office, who I referenced earlier, I call her like once I start really liking this guy, and she's like, you have to tell him. I'm like, I can't tell him. She's like, it is your responsibility to tell him because the person who gave it to you didn't tell you, and like you thought that was so unfair, and so like you have to tell him. So I mean, with her support, that helped too. But I definitely was expecting the worst of the worst, and it was the exact opposite. So,
and there was probably a lot of there was anxiety. There was a lot of anxiety there. Did you have to also go through and tell him how you got it, or was that something that just came up later?
No, I ended up telling him how I got it, like when we were sitting there. When I told him that I had it, then he was like, okay, and then we started talking about like how I got it. I mean, because like once you are like in that emotionally vulnerable state, like you might as well just let it all out because the wound is open. So you might as well just put it all out there. And yeah, he was really supportive of it.
Good.
So
that's good. What was I about to say? I thought about what I was going to say, and then I do this thing where I'm like, wait, I got to stop thinking about what I'm going to say next, and just like, it'll be there or it won't be there. That's awesome. Like I said, I'm very happy for you. I'm very happy for both of you guys. And I'm kind of jealous, though. You're like 100%, you are 100% on successful disclosures, and there's so many people out there who are like, I just got rejected, ghosted. So people are going to hate you when they hear this.
I know. I think it was like I said earlier, like I was really promiscuous for a really long time because I use it as an escape. And so like finally when I allowed myself to just be me and not have all of these extra people coming in and out of my life, like I was just focusing on me, then he just like came into my life and it just like worked. It just happened. So like I had to drop, and it was almost like, and that's I don't know if anyone's ever told you like herpes is a blessing, but like sometimes I think like it really truly is a blessing, because if it hadn't happened, like I probably would have continued with a lot of behaviors that I had been doing previously, and I would have never gotten in a serious relationship with him.
Yeah. Herpes is like a glass wall to a house, and you're just like running, doing whatever the fuck you want, and then you hit the wall, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And then you find your way to the door, and you open the door, and you walk through, and you're like, oh, there's all this cool stuff over here. Like that's what it is. And I often tell people that it helps you filter out and in people that you do or don't need in your life. So like you get rid of toxic people, because if you can't tell a secret to a friend without worrying about them telling someone else or using it against you, holding it over your head, that's not your friend. Yeah. And then if you tell someone and they go running for the hills, it's obvious what their intentions were with you right away. So yes, in a way, having herpes, it does make you realize what you want. It makes you sit down and think, okay, these are the things that I want. This is the kind of person I am. This is the kind of person I want to be. And here's what I'm going to do moving forward in order to ensure that does happen.
It forces you to accept and love yourself for who you are and like be comfortable in your own skin no matter what.
Yes. And there's so many people who need to hear that. So many people who need to hear like such a positive perspective, despite, all of the negativity that came with it, because like people like cry on a regular basis, and you've gone through so much more than them. For them, it's like a significant other cheated, brought something home, and now their life is over. And I'm always like, dude, it could have been so much worse. And a lot of people just don't understand that, because we live in a one-dimensional. I'm doing the exact same thing I told you not to do. I just put my hand in my face. We live in such like a one-dimensional tunnel vision like society where everyone just thinks it's all about them, and that's not the case. Like, just because you have problems, like, no, I don't want to say anyone's problems are any worse than anyone else's. We all have problems. Some of us are fortunate enough to choose what those problems are. Every one of us is fortunate enough to be able to choose how we respond to those problems. Yep. And fortunately for you, you responded in a way that's led you to the point where you are now, and you are healing. I don't want to say anyone's like healed, but like you're going to always continue to grow. You're going to always continue to heal as a result of your past and your present, and you're choosing every day how to go about your future. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with? We're hitting that 35-minute mark, and I told everybody that I would keep every show at 25 to 35 minutes.
I don't think so.
You sure?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll keep this longer if we need to. You sure? Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with?
If you contract herpes, it's not the end of the world, but it's your responsibility to tell all of your partners.
Yeah, don't be a dick and not tell people. Like I said, I've been there, and it's not.
I feel
it's
really
not worth
strongly. I feel very strongly that it is your responsibility to tell people, and that it is their choice to decide if they want to have sex with you or not. And if they don't, then you just accept it and move on.
There you go. That concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. I'm going to listen to this episode, find some kind of a quote, and make a cool title out of it and list this dope description. I can be found on Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr at HOnMyChest. Feel free to shoot me a message and thank Katie for sharing her story and her experience. God damn it, we're at 36 minutes. Maybe I can edit out one of those long pauses and get us under 35. We'll figure it out. But yeah, just shoot me a message. I'll let Katie know what you guys thought of it. Leave us a review and rate us on whatever podcast player you're listening on. And if you, damn it, I didn't bring my notebook in here that had the outro in it. So I'm leaving all of this in there too. If you have someone who may be interested in sharing their story, or if you have someone that you'd like to hear from or want me to reach out to, just shoot me a message on any social media. Let me know. I'll reach out to them. There's several support groups out there, by the way, for anyone who's living with STDs. I can put you in contact with someone who may know better than I can, or may know better than I do, where like your local groups are in your area. If you're looking for any kind of support or dating or common interest, whatever. So just shoot me a note. Let me know what you think of the podcast by leaving a review. And until next time, stay positive. Peace. You can say peace too.
Peace.
Or however you want to.
Bye.
Oh, what? How you go from peace to bye? That was so white.